Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this is Scott McDonald at DrDemographics.com. We're doing our weekly webinar, and today I happen to have Earl Douglas, or pardon me, Earl M. Douglas, who is one of the smartest guys in the room and has probably made or seen just about everything from one time or another. You know, Earl, from what I understand, you're a dentist by your training, right? You practiced.
I did.
You also have an MBA, and
Yes.
you have advanced certification in practice valuation. You know, in many ways, Earl, you kind of wrote the book on the industry. Would that be fair to say?
I think so, yes.
Okay. Now, and this is going to sound weird to some of our viewers, particularly the young guys, but I really love to have people who've been there and done that because they've made their mistakes on someone else's dime. And that is it's a great thing. So not only do you know an awful lot about brokerage, but you also know quite a bit about the Southeast United States. Now, obviously, what we do is we help evaluate locations to say, is this a good place or a bad place? We will make referrals out to brokers, by the way, because we're not on site. We can't do things. And you are looking at practices every day that are in that market. And therefore, knowing something about the doctors that are there, the sense of how the business is going, you know about how to value practices and also deal with the people who are local. Fair enough?
Sure is.
Okay. Now, this may sound a little provocative, but because you're primarily on the southern seaboard, you don't do Florida, you said, but you do Georgia, and you go up to Maryland, let's say. Right? And you do Tennessee. I'm sure a lot of Tennessee because you have a lot of growth within that area. But you're doing Arkansas, Alabama, North Carolina. Do you do South Carolina?
Yes.
Okay. So here's what let's start off with this. If we look at some locations in the United States, doing a startup is a piece of cake, especially when you have 2 or 3% growth within the area. And frankly, you could say, I'm going to just throw the seeds out there and they'll probably take root. But a lot of places I would definitely not recommend going anywhere without talking to a broker first. And this goes not only, of course, for the young people trying to find practices, but for the guys who are trying to sell. Because they themselves don't know how much their practice is really going to be worth, nor what the market potential is. And I kind of think you do. Now, if I say anything wrong, I want you to say, what are you talking about, Scott? You're crazy.
I'll say, hold on a minute.
I may be crazy, by the way, Earl, but you know, the point is you know this stuff. Now, let's talk for a second, if you don't mind, about why I think a broker is particularly good in certain areas. And for example, Atlanta. Greater Atlanta has so much complication, so many weird deals going on that I definitely think to buy or to sell the practice, you need professional help. And the more experienced the broker is, the better off you're going to be. Fair enough?
Yep.
Now, if we were to go to Opelika or some littler towns or something like that, I know the temptation is to kind of do the deal on your own, and we can avoid having to pay commissions. But I don't think that's necessarily a wise deal either. Because what you're hoping is that the broker is going to represent your interest, not just the interest, by the way, of the seller, who really is going to wind up paying you, but also the buyer can really benefit from having someone look through the numbers and say, here are some things that we ought to understand about a triple net deal or a quadruple net deal, if you want to worry about the roof. And that's kind of where your experience comes to play. So, is that how you see life? Am I wrong?
No, I think you're exactly right on those points. Atlanta is actually a microcosm of the galaxy as we know it. It goes from 0 to 100 in demand, marketability, viability, economic prospects. And just saying Atlanta raises more questions than answers. What part of Atlanta? What's the zip code? What's the street address? Because there are some places in Atlanta I would not go with a police escort. In other places, I'd feel pretty safe and happy to be there. So it takes some very good local knowledge of any area that somebody would consider. And I welcome people to call me and just say, hey, Earl, what do you think of this location? And I'll be quite honest with them. Sounds really good or not good. And then what is good, too? What is it?
Right.
Good,
It's
good
not,
is a place where your wife will be happy because there's a country club and a mall across the street. Or good is a place where you've got a lock on the whole dental patient community. So we have different criteria we have to consider too.
now, do you think it's true that the more the doctor knows about what they want and knows about themselves, the better you're going to be in helping to put a deal together?
Oh, absolutely. Unless the dentist knows the answer to the question, we're never going to find out what it is. What is important? I mean, we've had a dentist ready to buy a practice. And then his wife said, this is fantastic. I'm so happy for you. But if you ever want to see me and the children again, you won't buy this practice. So knowing that question is ultra important.
Okay, now, Earl, I got to tell you something. That's a lot of what our work is at Dr. Demographics. We are often trying to get the doctors to understand it isn't just the competition ratio that is the most important number on whether this is a good location to go to. There are lots of things about the lifestyles of the people, the practice model that will work in that location, the growth potential or the development potential of the area has got to be taken into account. But I'm going to be honest with you. I had an argument with a practice broker last week. It was kind of ugly. I don't want to talk about who it was, but he basically was just saying, look, all you need to know is what the competition ratio is. That's all that a purchasing doctor ought to know, and that is going to be the primary factor that's going to determine the viability of the site in terms for the seller. And I'm going, you're going to have a lawsuit on your hand if you say stuff like that, because you're just making everybody mad by not revealing what there is to know about the area. That's why the experienced broker and hopefully a demographer can help find the right place for them to practice. And it isn't just a binary choice of good or bad. It's what's going to be the best thing for your particular situation, your practice model, and your goals. True?
I couldn't argue with that. That's true. Yes.
I take that as a ringing endorsement, Earl. Thank you.
That's as excited as I ever get. But you're exactly right. And one of the huge questions, and Charlie Blair made this statement, and I think I've found the proof of it to make it a principle now. Most dentists practice within, actually 90% of dentists practice within 50 miles of their wife's parents. So there's a demographic.
Wow, that's an interesting stat
too. If you can make a 50-mile radius on a map, you're going to be a genius.
Oh, well, I wish you hadn't said that. No, I'm kidding. Anyway, no, but I believe it is true because it's true to the lifestyle. In fact, I'm going to throw one out to you. I'm working on an article on dentists' commute. How far away is too far for people to consider practicing? When people call up, they say, oh, yeah, give me an hour. I could travel 2 hours to the office. Absolutely. And I kind of roll my eyes and go, yeah, an hour commute, especially in an emergency on a Friday.
Once or twice.
Mm. Say that again?
Once or twice.
Yeah. So I'm kind of going, no, that's not realistic. But, here's the other thing, and this is very politically incorrect. When you have a female dentist, the demands that she has on her life are very often going to be different than on her male counterpart. I know, I shouldn't get into this, but it's just true. Women tend to still be the moms. And
there's a study that, more women are mothers than any other gender.
Never trade witticisms from a guy in Florida, okay? I'm just saying you'll lose every time. Oh, all right. I would love to continue on that line, but it probably is wise not to. Anyway, but the deal is what she has in her life. She's got to pick the kids up from school. If the babysitter can't make it, mom, who is the dentist, is going to have a harder time if she has a very long commute. So we're trying to say, look, based on your gender, the right place may be very different from your significant other who happens to be male. And that's just how life is, right? I mean, that's realistic. That's what we're trying to help people figure out. So
I like to remind them, if you travel 1 hour to work and 1 hour home, you've worked 8 hours extra that week. And you don't get paid for that. You just expose your life to danger.
Well, the U.S. Census has just released the fact that the national commute has increased by 8 minutes, which doesn't sound like a lot, but that's a day and a half a month, I think it is, and gets to be a lot, especially as the traffic time is increased because it's not as easy to get to work and from. Even if you're driving a private vehicle, it can be very demanding. And so we're having to have people reconsider what's a reasonable distance to go. When you brought that distance up from the wife's family, again, very politically incorrect, Earl. Come on.
Thank you.
Maybe entirely true, but it's one of those things, Well, let me just jump into something else, if you don't mind, because my time's never as long as I want. Okay. Now, Earl, in the areas that you're in, how's Arkansas doing? Is it growing? Are we seeing everything is going around Little Rock and the area in the northwest of the state, Bentonville, or how's the state doing?
I don't know too much about Arkansas, and truth be known, I don't know much about demographics and population. I look through a straw in what I do. I sell practices better than anybody in the world. And after that, I depend on people like you for expert advice. But I think we're going to see trends are generally metropolitan areas are concentrating, rural areas are diluting more. And yet the best business opportunities are in the rural areas. The best social opportunities are in the urban areas. And there's that compromise that has to be made, right, considering everybody's needs, demands in the family.
Well, now look, in your region, you've got some very big, thriving metropolitan areas and some very, very small towns with tiny practice areas, the areas that they're drawing from. And they're very different. I try to say it's not as though there's one that's good and one that's bad. You got to find something that's going to work for the doctor and their lifestyle and practice model. It's just a fact of life. But what you are doing is a little riskier, and that's why I'm strongly recommending the use of brokers, because you can make a bigger mistake in the southeast, than you can in a lot of other parts of the country where they tend to have more of a generic appeal of the practices. You got a lot of variety within the towns. In fact, I was working for a practice in Alabama. I did not realize that if you happen to be the wrong religion, don't go to that town if you happen to be a doctor. Sounds terrible, but it's kind of true, So you got to fit the doctor with the practice. Do you spend much time thinking about that kind of stuff when you're talking to your doctors?
I used to think about it, and I remember one occasion where there was a minority dentist who was going to buy a practice right across the street from the Raleigh Country Club. It is the biggest diaspora of culture you've ever seen. And I was trying to make sure the buyer knew, without being politically totally incorrect, that this isn't maybe a great match. And finally, he said to me, "Earl, I know I'm black. And if they don't come to me, they'll miss a great opportunity. It'll be their loss." And I follow up people after a year, and he, in spite of having to move the practice the next month from the building that was torn down, everything going against him, he hit all the projections of a perfect deal. So I've come to discover that I don't have any prognostic acumen anymore, but that I do make people aware. And you are a tremendous resource to help them become aware. And then it's up to them to roll the dice. But at least my goal for them, and I know yours is, "Doctor, I just want you to make the best informed decision in your own best interest." If you do that, I've done my job.
Okay, I could not agree with you more. And ultimately, it is a decision of the doctor. But if you are providing them information and giving them the means to make a wise choice based upon the facts, things can be great. But I also have to say one thing for our viewers. And this is going to sound weird, but I hear people say all the time, oh, this area is saturated. No one can make a living here. There's just no room. And yet, some bright young person who's enthusiastic and loves the people around him is going to move in and make a fortune. I wish I could say that it was never going to be the demographics or the psychographics, but a lot of times it's the attitude of the doctor who comes in. I wish I could measure for the doctor's attitude. But I do know that there's more opportunities out there for people who are willing to work hard and are willing to pay attention to what is around them, and get good advice from people who are a little seasoned and have been there. So that's kind of the way I think about you. In fact, Earl, you have been a dentist. Do you think that gives you an advantage as a broker?
I think so. In a subtle way, I wore your shoes. I know what it's like to walk in your shoes, and reflecting back, that was very helpful. But a lot of times, you can't see the picture when you're inside the frame. So getting out of the frame gave me the other perspective I needed too.
What do you think you learned by getting out of the frame? I'm sorry if that's provocative, but what'd you learn? What did you find out?
I learned a lot about what makes us, and I say us dentists, tick. I know our fears. I know our concerns. I know our frustrations. I know our satisfactions. I know our shortcomings. Actually, we're business owners who don't know the first thing about running a business. And that's a little bit of a disadvantage when you stop and think about it.
It kind of is, yeah. Yeah, but you have to trust people who do know the business side of things.
Oh, so important. The most successful, happiest dentist I know feel like they're the most incompetent and they need help and they take help. And the most frustrated dentists are the ones who think they know it all and are always certain, never right. So humility is a huge key to success in dentistry.
I agree with you in almost everything in life. But Earl, one of the things I'm going to tell you to your face is you're one of the better listeners than I know. You actually don't kind of put yourself up on a pedestal. You're the kind of person who actually says, well, tell me something about what you want, where you are, what you're living, what your thoughts are. I see that as being a remarkably valuable quality that you have. So it's one of the reasons why I kind of like sending folks over. I mean, you started up ADS South, right? It was kind of
yes. ADS National, actually.
So, and by the way, in case people don't know, and correct me if I'm wrong, Earl, this is kind of an association of practice brokers, right? It's not like it's a top-down driven thing. The individual brokers have a lot to do with the success of their business, right?
Yes, the individual brokers are just that. They are all individual business owners who all own their own practices. So we all are able to work given the individual aspects of our territories, because different territories are different and they need a different approach to the business. So we're able to do that.
And again, that is one reason why I keep going back to people who know the area that they're working in. I don't see any quick and dirty formula to say, oh yeah, this person has a national database and therefore they know everything. They don't. But I also think that because dentistry in particular is a people business, those people who know people best, it's the most useful, most helpful to these people, particularly those people who are either, well, they have a lot at risk because they're selling a practice or they're buying a practice and there's a lot at risk. You kind of need that steady hand. And I'm going to be honest with you, I'm very fortunate that people have trusted me. Of all the things, yes, I'm remarkably bright and of course good looking. I mean, come on. But it's the idea that I really like the people I work with and respect them. I think that's helped a lot. And I gather that from you and so many of your colleagues, by the way. I'm not trying to make a commercial here, but it is a thing that I think we have to value more, not less, as we go forward with the risks associated with practice acquisition and valuation. So,
Well, you're exactly right on that. And I'm in the people business. I'm also in the financial analysis business, the legal business, the bank financing business, but it's really the people business. And when I'm working with a seller, I think I allocate 90% of my fee to expert hand-holding. When they call up all upset, to be able to listen, and at the end, it's universally the same comment: you always calm me down when I'm going berserk. So that is a huge part of what I do, plus grease the rails to make the process seamless for them. And I love listening to the buyers. And many times I'll echo what you just said. I'll tell somebody, you're going to do very well. He says, how do you know? I said, because you were able to listen to me without interrupting. Do you know how few people can listen without interrupting? And when you do that, patients will think you care about them. Whether you do or not, you will get that impression. So you're right exactly on that.
Well, I've got one quick story I'm going to tell you about, and this guy was really a quasi-incompetent clinician, all right? Never got sued, never had a peer review case against him. He just wasn't really a good clinician, but everybody in his practice freaking loved him because he genuinely cared about the people he knew. In fact, he would memorize the name of their pets. He would know their kids' names, who's graduating from high school, where they're going to college. And it's really hard when you have somebody who genuinely cares and listens to doubt what they're suggesting to you, you know. But that's, you know, it's the life of dentistry.
I think that might be a dentist I met. I remember him telling me in his office, he said something only one dentist in my 36 years has ever said: Earl, I'm really not a very good dentist, but I really care about my patients. And when I do something that doesn't work, I get upset. And the patient says, Doc, don't be upset. You did your best. He'll never be sued.
No.
Because people think he cared and did his best. You can't blame people for that. But, yeah, the surgeons who graduate in the top half of their programs are sued much higher rates than the bottom half.
Yeah, I know you're right. I don't know if this was the direction that I wanted to take with this interview, but frankly, it's still true and maybe of great value to the people who watch this.
It's off the rails, but it's still moving.
You're a funny guy, Earl. All right, our time is just about up. Is there anything you want to say in conclusion?
Well, again, not a commercial, but I like to consider myself among the smarter dentists with humility, in that I'm good at what I do, but I realize that my skill and ability ends in a very narrow diameter. And I'm very fortunate that we have people like you who I can refer to, and I don't have to worry about the client not being well served. So the area of demographics is critical for somebody starting up, and even people buying practices through us really want to know, what am I getting into?
Right.
So thank goodness that you're out there and able to assist them in those areas.
Let me just throw one last little thought out to those who are watching. You know, one of the things about a person who's a broker who's been around the area a lot, they know so much about the history of the area and the history of the practices that they're looking at. But one of the things about demography, it projects what's going on. Where are the trends going? And so that's why we kind of have to work hand in glove with what we're trying to do to help the doctors we're working with. Earl, again, thank you so much for your time. I look forward to seeing you. I hope to see you at the conference sometime later this year for the practice valuation group. And we'll talk again sometime in the future. Everybody, thanks so much for watching. Check us out at drdemographics.com, and we'll talk at you soon.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.